We each are in a complex web of relationships, each in some way providing something that we experience ourselves as not being. Relationship gives us something towards our completeness. And most times we are so identified with our separateness, which feels less than whole. We experience our need and we say, I need intimacy, I need companionship, I need security from somebody, I need. And you go in with a cup filled. The problem with that as a form of relationship that arises again and again is that the need has with it a model in your mind of what it is that will fulfill that need. But what we have in the universe is what is. And what we are constantly trying to do is cram what is into our model of what it is we want to be. So you are constantly trying to manipulate other people to live out your fantasy, fulfill your model of what you think you need. And frustration and the anger is often because other people just are who they are, not who you think they ought to be from your need point of view. And as long as you're identified with your need, that's all you can see is whether people fulfill your fantasy. The minute you are connected with that part of you which has no need, then the reason for relationship changes. You come together with people because there is some dance to do. There is some business at hand. Not so much out of needfulness, but more out of delight or play or joy. If you can see, just see the two into one. We talked about where you come and you're busy being separate, needful, separate. I need. I feel inadequate. I feel insecure. I feel frightened. I feel lonely. I feel self-pity. I feel, etc. I need. And then you, through a relationship or in some way, you awaken into the oneness you just are. And that sure, there are all these needs and all that stuff, but you still just are. And behind all the needs, you are. And R doesn't need anything. It just is. I is. And then resting in that place, you see that in your full isness, you are in form. And so you come to fulfill the form as one being in two, meaning as the one, as God at play. And then it's called Leela or dance. So you can see that relationships come at different levels of this. Relationship can be two separate entities relating out of needfulness, psychological, symbiosis, complementarity, coming together to fulfill each other's needs. Relationship can also be the dance of the one playing as two. Now, you can see relationships, a special relationship like with a partner, in three ways. One is as a support system having nothing to do with your spiritual work particularly. It's merely something that you, well, now I've got that taken care of. Now I can do my meditation. Right? I've got a partner and I've got my marriage taken care of, a family. That's all settled. Now I can go to work. That's one way of looking at relationships. The next way of seeing relationship is as yoga, meaning as a vehicle for the two coming into the one. That is, you come together with somebody in order to transcend. Now it's a yogic method. It's a tantric method, meaning a method of using the senses and the mind to go beyond the senses and the mind. And then the third form of way a relationship works is where you are resting in the one, and then you are in a relationship as the play of the one as two. And then it's dance or play or delight. And they're not mutually exclusive, but these are three different ways in which people do use relationships in relation to spiritual work. When you are separate, and you are needful, and you're identified with your need, you are looking for something like, as I may have said, that image of the baby duck, when the silhouette of the mother duck goes before its field, and a certain thing goes and it opens its mouth to be fed. It's an instinctual response. It's a pattern that awakens a certain response. And in a way, although we are not instinctual at that completely involuntary level, there is a very heavy instinctual overlay. It's sort of a psychological set of instincts or patterns that are called key releasing mechanisms that just release responses. And if you are feeling that you are less than whole, you are looking for that which will give you completeness. And often when you meet that person, a person who represents that, at least in your projections, whether they do or not remains to be seen, but in your projections, what happens is it releases in you a door, like my guru released in me. It's a release that allows you to come into a place in your being and leads you to say, I am in love. Now, what has happened is that other person has been your connection. You can't get to the place any other way but through them. And so when you meet them, you say, I am in love. And because you confuse the method with the state, you say, I am in love with you, which really you're saying, you are my connection to the place in me where I am loved. It's another way of saying that thing, although it's a little grosser way of saying it, a little less romantic. Now, romantic love is the love that comes from needfulness, and it's the love of where you connect and you experience being in love through the other person. And what happens immediately is, the minute you are dependent on anything or form in order for you to feel completeness, because the word love, state of conscious love, is the same as consciousness or awareness. It's the flow. It's being part of the universe. It's being one with it all. It's feeling of release, of totality. And when you experience that feeling, and the reason you experience it through a form, you become very possessive of that form. And you want to know where that form will be next Thursday night. You want to have that form. You want to take that whole form home and lock it in some way. So it's just like any junkie with a connection. You want to make sure your connection is there all the time when you need it. And you don't want your connection going off and being for somebody else. And there is a lot of anxiety in romantic love, and that's part of what makes it so exciting and so horrible, the horrible beauty of romantic love, because you are dealing with the inevitability, even when it's at its highest moment, that it's going to change. Because as long as it involves forms in the universe, forms change. Minds change, so people fall in and out. Their needs change, so what fulfilled the need one moment doesn't fulfill it later. Not only that, but people die, people go away, people fall in love with someone else. I mean, it's all up for grabs. So there's a lot of fear in that kind of love. And it's all the stuff that feeds romantic poetry, that attraction and fear all mixed together. The horrible beauty of human romantic love. As you awaken, as you begin to be aware that you aren't who you think you are, as you begin to allow yourself to rest in a place in your being that isn't needful, that isn't frightened, that isn't lonely, just is. At first, it'll just feel like awareness. Later, it starts to have feelings of bliss and rapture, and you start to feel this extraordinary feeling like you are in love. Except you're not in love with anybody in particular, you're just in love. Now, it's interesting because you have been working. You grew up because your whole personality is based on a deprivation model. So you developed a personality in a sense as a model of I am not enough. I am a part of. I am needful. I am separate. And so most of your patterns of response are connected with that model that you have. Personality is usually built on that's why Freud always dealt from negative to zero, never positive. Just that's really what we're dealing with both the time. If you start to experience that feeling and you look at somebody, you will feel that feeling of love, and you're looking at somebody, and your old deprivation model leads you to want to collect that person. So what you say is you want to build a nest together, in fact, one way or another. I mean, you go and get sticks and twigs and stuff, and you nest. And you are nesting, and then at some point you say, well, I'm going down to the store and get tofu and soy burgers. And you're at the checkout counter, and you look into the eyes of the person at the checkout counter, checkout person, and it happens again. See, because it's coming from in you. It's no longer dependent on somebody else doing it. It's there in you. And so you look, and there's your beloved again. And you're still in your deprivation model, you see, because the other one may not be in the nest when you get home. Because you're still feeling somehow frightened you're going to lose it if you need it. So you start, can you, to the checkout person, if you consider a menage a trois, you know. And then it gets more and more complicated all the time, as many of you have found out, that like the Adamites and all these people who develop extended communes. But politically and economically, you finally have to give up your deprivation model because it's not functional anymore. Otherwise, you got to wear sunglasses or something with mirrors inside so you don't look at people anymore. You get to the point, especially as you start to rest in your soul more, where more and more you are seeing the beloved everywhere you look. And you're going to have to let go of the model that you got to collect it every time you see it. That's what has to go finally because we are so unprepared to be in love with everybody. See, that we feel we've got to do something about it every time it happens because it's so rare. Well, what happens if it isn't rare anymore? We aren't prepared for that kind of way of being in the universe. And it took a long time for me. First, what happened was when I started to see what was going to happen and I began to sense it, I would look at people and I would feel that thing happen, that love, that beloved. And I'd be very confused because I would be like halfway between models. I couldn't quite give up the old model. So I'd say, are you experiencing what I'm experiencing? And then I knew there was no more room at home. There are two things I'd like to read to you, because this gets very close to now what the spiritual work of devotional yoga is, about how you work with the beloved in the world. This is a form of yoga. Kabir was a great bhakti, great devotional yogi. And he said, since the day I met with my Lord, there has been no end to the sport of our love. I see with eyes open and smile, and behold his beauty everywhere. I utter his name, and whatever I see, it reminds me of him. Whatever I do, it becomes his worship. Wherever I go, I move around him. All I achieve is his service. When I lie down, I lie prostrate at his feet. Whether I rise or sit down, I can never forget him. For the rhythm of his music beats in my ears. And when you start to see the reflection of your own love everywhere in everybody you look, it doesn't matter any longer what their mind is saying. They may be caught in their own mind, that you experience merely the beloved in another form. And what they experience when they can open, what you are then is an environment of unconditional love for them that they can open to if they're ready. So you just go around seeing the beloved all the time, and then they do whatever they need to do. As long as you think you need something from somebody, you can't open that way. Because your perception of another human being will always have a conditional quality, whether or not they're going to fulfill it. Like if you open your heart to somebody and they say, you disgust me, get away. I mean, can you get to the point where you can say, gee, it's too bad that you feel that way because I'm beautiful. I am what I am. If you can't love me, I'm sorry. Or does it, are you looking in their eyes to see if you're enough? If you're adequate, if you're lovable? See, as long as it comes from a needful state, you're constantly a conditional lover. And most relationships stay at the level of conditional love. I'll love you if you, and you love me if you. And then we're afraid of change. So we enter into conspiracies not to change. It's like, I'll make believe you are who you think you are. You'll make believe I am who I think I am. And you won't change and I won't change. And the whole thing turns into some kind of mechanical, like plastic dance. It's horrible. I mean, sometimes you see that, and it's really ghastly. You see two people. We're the Joneses, like, and I would live in, parks, motor parks, the Smiths and the Browns and the Greens, who, we're the Browns, Sam, put out the garbage. And it's all, everything is, and you feel the frightening loneliness, isolation into patterns, locked into ritual. I think all of us would like to live in a loving world. And you begin to see that you live in a world created by your own heart and mind. And that as long as you are identified with your separateness and your needfulness and your fear, there's no way. Because every message you're sending out is conditional love, and that creates in everybody around you fear. And they can only open so far. And this was a poem that was a very thorough poem that Bhagwan Das turned me under. It's called I Am the Great Sun, from a Norman crucifix, 1632, by somebody named Charles Quadra. And it's just where you're seeing love or where you won't see it. I am the great sun, but you do not see me. I am your husband, but you turn away. I am the captive, but you do not free me. I am the captain, you will not obey. I am the truth, but you will not believe me. I am the city, but you will not stay. I am your wife, your child, but you will leave me. I am that God to whom you will not pray. I am your counsel, that you do not hear me. I am the lover whom you will betray. I am the victor, but you do not share me. I am the holy dove whom you will slay. I am your life, but if you will not name me, seal up your soul with tears and never blame me. It's only when your love is here, you realize that you're not vulnerable. You can love everybody. It's okay to love them. Even people whose actions you were poor. See, that's where the fire of purification comes. Because the judging mind turns off the heart again and again. You come into a judging mind, I can't love him. I can't love her. He doesn't agree with the way he doesn't see the world the way I do. Years ago, when I was driving across the country, which I do quite often, and I had a 1938 Buick limousine that I had made into a camper, and I was just cruising along the New York Thruway, and I got stitched for going too slow. I was going 40 miles an hour, and I was sitting with one leg under me, just driving along, and I was doing mantra. I was repeating the names of God. And this particular time, I was repeating Krishna's name. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare. And I'd been doing it for hours. And I was in such a state. I just kept enough down. I put grounded enough to keep the steering wheel and, So the state trooper stopped me, and he came up to get my license and registration. Well, in the state of consciousness I was in, who I saw coming through the window, What I saw was Krishna. I mean, what form would you expect God to come? He doesn't always come as a carpenter, you know. Why not a state trooper? So Krishna had come to give darshan. But I learned from the drug days that you don't say everything you see. So he asked for my license and registration. And, I mean, I'm so happy to have the darshan of God that I'll play whatever form. You want me to be a culprit, I'll be a culprit. I don't care, you know, just once I hang out with you. I'm looking at him with just total love. I mean, how would you look at your beloved? You know that feeling? And I hand him the license and registration, and he checks out the car and calls in, does the whole number. Says, what's in that box? And I say, it's mints. Would you like one? I see the whole game, and he does too. And he runs through his routine. He tells me to drive on ancillary roads when I go so slow. So now he's used up that routine, but he doesn't want to go away. Faith is very rarely looked at with unconditional love. He says, great car you got here. Allows us to spit and kick the tires and talk about straight eights, and they don't make them like they used to. Do a whole bunch of routine together. I'll do anything. I don't care. To play, I'll play. It's okay. So he runs out of that one. Now he's either got to cop to who he is, or that's it. We've run out of routines within these roles. So he says, all right, be gone with you, which is already a little suspicious, but we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. And state troops don't usually say that, you know, be gone with you. So I try to drive away, and I look in my rearview mirror, and he's gone back to his police car, and he's waving at me. Okay, now you blew it. And it's interesting that you start to live in this now you can call it psychosis, and psychologist, that's what I would call me now. I then would have me hospitalized. But it's an extraordinary experience to start to open your, because this is the method of devotional bhakti yoga, where you see that, after all forms are the forms of the formless. This is all God made manifest. This is all of it. If you just can get for a moment out of your needful state of deprivation, which is your mind, it's because you bought a model of yourself. And that model is coloring everything you see. So you constantly have to be using everything around you to fulfill something. The minute you can just rest in your isness, you can start to look out. And you just see your lover in all these different forms. And these forms are, I mean, all the faces. I mean, when you're in love with somebody, you know the fun of making faces with each other and flipping in and out of different roles together? And sometimes it gets scary, and you say, don't scare with me, come on back. I mean, you'll see it's too scary now, you know. Well, that's it, and you start to just look at all the different faces around you. And your heart doesn't close because you don't need anything. Your heart stays open. Perhaps the hardest thing is to be able to say no to people and keep your heart open in relationships. Like you take a child, and you have to say no. You have empathy as a human. You have a heart with empathy. And the empathy makes you experience that person, when you say no to them, they feel pain. They're frustrated. So you feel a frustration. And then they're angry at you because you said no to something they wanted. And you don't want to feel anger from somebody you love. So because of the empathy with the frustration and the not wanting to feel anger, when you say no, you just slowly close your heart. Protect yourself. So you just pull away just a little bit. And that's what we've all learned. We somehow learned that no means somehow a little coldness, a little withdrawal, a little bit of distance between people. And it's interesting that when you are resting in a part of your being where you're just listening to hear your dharma or the way to manifest, and you see in this condition, no is appropriate, you say no without getting lost only in your human heart. You have those feelings, but you don't close down. That line from Kabir, do what you do with another human being, but never put them out of your heart. That's really big. I mean, if you want an essence teaching, that the word that my guru used more than any other word with most all these people that came to see him and offer themselves and all. I mean, when you think of gurus in the West, you think of people that say, sign here, join me, I'll take you through, come to my ashram. The word that my guru used most frequently was Jao. Jao means split, get lost, go away. Imagine that. I mean, you go across the ocean and you fall at his feet. He looks at you and he says, Jao. Jao? I just got here. Don't you want me? And all your paranoia, all your feeling of being unloved, unwanted, being rejected, all come into play. But after a while, you go and you come and he says, Jao, and you go and you come and he says, Jao, and he keeps throwing you out and throwing you out and throwing you out until you start to hear the word Jao and you hear him saying things like, go with love. It's okay, you can go on, you're loved. Go, the light is everywhere. What do you need to stay here for? You don't need me, go on with it. He's saying, I love you. And it's far out how the word get lost, go, which would usually hurt you, comes to be the caress of love. That's an incredible teaching, just to show you the flip of just a way in which you are reacting and closing your heart down instead of keeping it open. There was a moment when I went to the temple one day, and Maharaji had said, Ramdas, saints never get angry, you should never get angry. And we was usually sent into the back part of the temple. There was a big wall. We were kept there sort of during the day, Western contingent. And we'd be trotted out to show to Indians now. And we were kept there and fed, watered, on the way to the bus. So one day I went upstairs to an old room I lived in when I had been in India 5 years before, just for sentimental reason. And it had a window that looked out on the front part of the yard, which that was forbidden territory. And I looked out, and there was Maharaji with one of the Indian sadhus, spiritual guys that lived in the temple. Maharaji was at the window of his little room there. And the guy was in front of the window, and Maharaji was screaming at him in rage. And I looked at this rage, and I thought, what's he getting so angry about? He's not supposed to get angry. And he screamed at the guy, and the guy was backing off, and Maharaji came out into the courtyard, and he stood there like a lion, and he was screaming, and everybody was cowering, and he was, and I thought, why not? He told me, saints never get angry. I'm going to trade him in. I'm going to get the hypocritical phony. I was furious. I mean, I really felt betrayed by him. So I went back down and I sat downstairs. And it turned out that immediately I was hiding back there. I mean, there was no way anybody could see me from the window. I was back in the shadows. Nobody looked up at any time. The minute after this moment, Maharaji was screaming at the guy and sending him away, throwing him out of the temple. So the guy went into the back part to get his belongings to leave the temple. Because he had left some potatoes rot or something like that in the storeroom. The minute I went downstairs, it turned out Maharaji went back into his room and he called one of his devotees in, an Indian man. He said in a very matter-of-fact way, Ramdas, see me get angry? The man said, no, Maharaji, he didn't. He says, he's back. He says, no, he saw me get angry. You tell him all his questions to be answered. So the man came back very confused. He said, did Maharaji get angry? He said, yes. He said, well, all your questions will be answered. I said, well, they better be. Really. I was so mad at him that when this sadhu came with his belongings ready to leave, I went over to him. I never liked him in the first place. He was always fawning on Westerners and always wanted things, and he was kind of crazy anyway. I went over and I held him and I gave him money and I walked with him out to the bus through the front, which we weren't allowed to go through, and everybody was like, look what Ramdas was doing, and I defiantly walked with him. I mean, this was my act. If you bastard, you get angry, I'll show you. You know, took him to the bus, saw the guy off, walked back. It was like high noon, you know. Yard, came back into the back, and sat there all day, just steaming. At the end of the day, we were on our way out, and I was still angry, and we were sitting in front of him, and this couple had been having a fight, this married couple. And they were sitting in front of him, and he said to them, he said, look at your life. He said, do what you do with each other, but never put each other out of your heart. And what I saw was that his anger towards that sadhu was anger, but maybe he didn't put him out of his heart. Maybe there was something else I didn't understand. And that the minute I got angry at him, I started to put him out of my heart. And I heard all that all at once. The karma from that moment was incredible. That sadhu followed me all over in 2 years, wrote me letters, created problems everywhere we went. It turned out that Maharaji had a whole other scene with him from years back, and they worked out something, and the guy was going through something, and Maharaji was using what would be called dharmic anger, which is that kind of anger that Zen monks use when they seem very angry, or like in the stories of Marpa and Nilarepatula, where there's anger, but it's anger coming out of love. It's not anger in which the heart's closed. When you can love somebody enough, you can be angry with them. That's the one. But anger that closes the heart, watch it, because you can't afford it. It's a beautiful quote from Mayor Baba. He said, love has to spring spontaneously from within. It is in no way amenable to any form of inner or outer force. Love and coercion can never go together. Love can never be forced on anyone. It can be awakened in her or him through love itself. Love is essentially self-communicative. Those who do not have it catch it from those who have it. True love is incomparable and irresistible, and it goes on gathering power and spreading itself until eventually it transforms everyone whom it touches. And you can do the same issue about the transformation of consciousness and culture by just substituting the word love for consciousness. And you work on yourself so that you rest in your being, consciousness, love. You become an instrument in which everyone else can touch their heart through your presence. Not because you're coming on to them, not because you're coercing them, merely because you are not a conditional love. Just because you are, because you don't need it. There are two kinds of relationships you enter into. So there are relationships that are given relationships. And since you can't trade them in, you take them as they are, and they are your work on yourself in order to get to the point where you can keep your heart open with them just the way they are. And that's the fire that you chose and created by being involved with those people from a soul's point of view. And then we have acquired karma, which are friends that you make when you share an interest, like you're on the bowling team. And then you lose interest in bowling, and there goes the friend. And it's not any ill will, it's just that your interests shifted and you move away. Now, where does marriage fit into that? See, initially, till death do us part, it was you took a relationship and you added it to the group of given karma.